Albinger ABC News.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
KVNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Adams Wealth Advisors. A two-vehicle crash Wednesday morning sent one man to the hospital with serious injuries. The accident was reported around 8 a.m. west of Newton. Utah Highway Patrol Sergeant Jason Kendrick said a 22-year-old Cornish man was driving a Buick Regal westbound along SR 142. Just west of the SR 23 intersection, the car drifted across the center line and collided with a Dodge pickup head-on. The single occupant of the Buick was pinned inside the car and had to be extricated by emergency crews. A medical helicopter later transported him to a hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries to his lower leg. The driver of the Dodge pickup, a 32-year-old Clarkston woman, sustained minor injuries. She was driven to the hospital to be checked out as a precaution. Kendrick said initial evidence suggests the driver of the Buick may have suffered from some sort of medical issue or fatigue. Just prior to the crash, there was no sign of impairment, and troopers did not find any evidence of drugs or alcohol in the vehicle. Police officers and firefighters in Ogden rescued two teenagers who fell through the ice at a pond Wednesday morning. Police body camera video shows the rescue at the 21st Street Pond near 60 West 20th Street around noon.
Hey, calm down, buddy. We're going to help you. Hey. You're all right. Hey, keep swimming.
According to police, bystanders called 911 to report the two boys, one 17 and the other 19, had fallen through the ice. When police arrived, one of the victims was already out of the water, but the second victim was still trapped in the ice. Two officers fell through the ice while attempting to rescue the teens.
Come on, keep climbing. Got the other guy. That's cool.
Rescuers used a rope to throw a line to the teenage boy as officers began pulling him toward the shore. Fire crews used a ladder to help him climb out of the freezing lake. Nobody sustained significant injuries, according to law enforcement. A statement from Ogden Police said that they are grateful for the concerted efforts of both law enforcement agencies working together to rescue the male. They're also grateful no one sustained serious injuries. They ask citizens to please be cautious around water where ice is present. In this season of ever-changing weather, it's uncertain as to the integrity of the ice. And a bill that would boost by $20 the amount Idaho residents can recover annually on grocery sales taxes has passed the full House. Idaho residents under age 65 can currently get annual maximum tax credits of $100 for the money they spend on taxes at the grocery store. Older residents get slightly more. The bill that passed the House Thursday was sponsored by Representative Jim Addis and would boost that amount to $120, starting with tax returns filed in 2024. It would cut about $32 million from state revenues. Opponents say the bill does not put enough money back in taxpayers' pockets. KVNU weather brought to you by Maple Creek Ranch, home to a paradise free of Cache Valley inversions. Enjoy warmer winter temperatures and cleaner air, being several hundred feet above Cache Valley's floor. Visit maplecreekranch.net. Well, tonight, partly cloudy, haze through the night, areas of fog after midnight, low near 20. Partly cloudy, areas of fog in the morning, haze through the day on Friday, high around 40. For the latest news, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Adams Wealth Advisors is the gold winner for financial planning in the Best of Northern Utah competition. Thank you for your vote. Putting clients first under any circumstance will bring peace of mind when working with Adams Wealth Advisors.
This is Craig Adams. At Adams Wealth Advisors, we are here to help you receive peace of mind whether you've done a lot of planning or a little planning. Count on our team at Adams Wealth Advisors for honesty, professionalism, and integrity.
Visit AdamsWealthAdvisors.com or call 752-1702 to schedule a time with an advisor today. Please see AdamsWealthAdvisors.com for more information on these recent awards.
News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
When people leave one job for another, they usually take their personal stuff along with them, and yet millions of people still leave their 401k behind. Fortunately, Edward Jones can help you take control of your money. We'll explain your options and, if appropriate, help you roll over your 401k without paying taxes or penalties. To learn more, contact any of the 5 Edward Jones financial advisors in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cache Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have 2 guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. Hour 1 of today's show, Thursday, February 10th. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. Charlie Schill coming up later on in the show. Swapping things around a bit today. Charlie will be with us at 5 instead of 4 to talk theater in Cache Valley. So stay tuned for that. One of the reasons we've rearranged the schedule today is to accommodate the schedule of a very special guest joining us here in the studio as we speak. Congressman Blake Moore. And Congressman Moore, I appreciate making some time for KVNU today. And let me say before we get into the discussion, to the questions listeners have sent in, anything like that, one of the things that we have heard repeatedly from our listeners as your first year has played out is people are impressed with your accessibility. They've enjoyed all the opportunities they've had to hear from you and talk to you in person. And it has to be a bit exhausting. It does. I can't imagine back and forth from D.C. to Utah as required for your time there, but also you've hosted town halls, teletown halls. You've joined us here on the radio for radio town halls on a regular basis. It's quite a bit of time that you've spent making yourself available to people. And we do actually hear a lot of that from listeners. They like it. So.
Well, I appreciate folks noticing. I appreciate you mentioning it, but agree or not, society's never going to agree on every single decision, but I always just looked at it as when I show up and explain things and actually provide context, you kind of you build some bridges with folks, and you're able to be there. But I think it's fundamental to my role in this, and is to be there and to show as much as I can. I have a young family, and we make that work. Still make it to when I'm not in D.C., you can't really control the schedule.
Sure.
But when you're back in district, we'll make sure we'll get the Little League games on a Wednesday. We make sure to schedule the town hall on a Thursday night, like that type of stuff, and we're managing that. So
I've always wondered how that played out for young children. We're used to our federal representatives being older. You have young children, and I wonder at school when someone says, "What does your dad do?" And then they tell them, and they're like, no.
Look, I'm not supposed to say this is a secret, but I'm the mystery reader tomorrow for my son. So I'm going to show up tomorrow.
Oh, very cool.
And I'm supposed to figure out like a kid's book that I'm going to read to his 3rd grade class, and I'm supposed to dress up as that character. I'm going with either Jackie Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Or I'm going with Abraham Lincoln, given President's Day, and then
That's gonna be fun.
We even had the idea of dressing up as a Golden Spike. Because I've been doing some stuff on the Golden Spike Memorial that we're trying to put out there. And so, yeah, we got lots of ideas brewing. I better figure it out by noon tomorrow.
That's quite a deadline. That is it tough, with Congress? Things, at least, the impression we all get when you read the news, usually coming out of the D.C. press, unfortunately, it seems that things are pretty hectic and the pace seems quite ramped up. Does that make it difficult?
Well, I won't deny that over the last year, things have been hectic. There's been a lot of turmoil, a lot of partisanship that's played out over the last year, probably more than most any other year. To have a January 6th and then to have Afghanistan, just crisis that we had, to happen in like your first 6 or 7 months of your term, like that doesn't happen in some people's tenure back in Washington. So there has been a lot of that. But what I focus on with people is that's nothing that I can control a lot of times. I can react to it, and we make our statements, or we address what's kind of happening. But the work that we actually do, the committee work that we get on, the things that we can have control over, has been awesome, and it's been such a positive, productive experience that that's the kind of stuff that keeps you going.
That's very nice to hear. And you mentioned January 6th. This is a question I know everyone wants me to ask, so we'll just get it out of the way. It happened here in Utah. That's why Utah elected representatives are being asked, our federal representatives. But an RNC meeting here, and there was a vote to censure 2 members of Congress, and then a statement of sorts describing the January 6th insurrection as legitimate political discourse. And there's been, as I understand, a bit of a rift within the Republican caucuses on that. Where are you at as you watch this play out?
Yeah, particularly that last piece about the legitimate political discourse. That's why it's so important. Words matter. And if you put out a statement that you know is going to be widely reported on, you need to have that stuff buttoned up. And then to have to go back for the RNC to be able to have to go and then provide an explanation about that type of stuff, you have to be very clear about that. It's wrong to categorize anything really that took place that day. What I experienced, I mean, I was in the House chamber. That is not legitimate political discourse. The way that it's being explained, I get that too. And there's other elements of this current January 6th committee that I'm not supportive of. It's a very hyper-partisan committee, but I'll also talk about the bipartisan January 6th commission that would have been something that I did support. I
remember that. You were very early in that saying this should be investigated.
So, that commission...
But now you say they've taken it different ways.
Sometimes when you're back there, you can see the forest from the trees. You know what would ultimately come. I think it's not good for our country to have this, and I as Speaker Pelosi has Leader McCarthy submitted 5 people to be on this current committee, and 2 of them were kicked off. And that's like unprecedented.
Before they started.
Yeah, before they started. And so then McCarthy's like, well, I'm not going to have the 5 commit. And it's like, it's just tumultuous at that point. The bipartisan January 6th commission, there were broad support for that leading up from the impeachment vote. And Republicans were very supportive of that. And then kind of at the last minute, it was like, there's a little bit of duplicative nature to this, and let's back away. And many of us were like, no, we've been committed on this since January, and it's not going to have any members of Congress. It's going to be done by December 2021, so it won't even involve an election year, and it'll be very much a commission style that can produce outcomes like, why in the world does the Speaker of the House, whether you're Republican or Democrat, why do you have so much control over like the decision of whether or not to bring the National Guard in?
Sure.
Right, and we have to get at the root of some of the problems because this could be a whole other segment. When we get rid of precedent in our Congress, like things like the filibuster and things like, when you get rid of that, they never come back, and it makes things continually worse and worse. So just in general, you can't use that language of legitimate political discourse. Of course, that's going to blow up and be widely reported, and
sure.
And to the extent how it was meant, how it was not, that was, I believe, a clear mistake and wrong. Just the censure in general, the American people need the Republican Party heavily focused on making sure that we can, focus on 2022, win in majority, because right now, with Republicans or Democrats in charge of the White House, House, and Senate, it's created bad outcomes, inflation, and you can go across the board. We need balance in our government. There will be good things that happen, and we can create that. And that's what the American people need us to focus on, and this was largely a distraction. And again, I reach back to the 2 different types of commission, the bipartisan one. We do that, we kind of avoid this whole mess that continues on. Because Reps Cheney and Kinzinger, they were going to do this. Again, I'm very not supportive. You look at this current select committee, and you're not going to get to the root of anything because it is hyper-partisan. And when you kick off Republicans that were selected to be on there, it's not going to produce the ultimate reactions. And then the American people just continue to get more and more of this sort of negative discourse. It's funny too, that committee, this is how bold Speaker Pelosi is. The chair of the current committee, he's a representative out of Mississippi. He didn't certify the election. You know how Democrats have been all over, and I did certify the election, so I actually think I can bring some credibility to this argument. The Democrats, for the last 2 Republicans that have won the White House, there's been a group of Democrats that didn't certify the election.
Yeah.
And you would never know that. You'd think after January 6th it was the first time that anybody had ever done it when it was never a lot of it. But now, to be fair, I mean, we had a lot of Republicans that wanted to do that. We need to clarify, like, Congress's role is to count the elector. It is our role. Unless there's a state that sends 2 slates of electors, then we don't have a constitutional role there.
Sure.
And that's where this back and forth is. Democrats have done it, and Republicans did it. And what I hope to be able to we can come out of all this is clarity on that, and make sure we identify that there should be no nefarious behavior of states, sending those second slates of electors.
Sure.
Because that's stuff that's actually kind of coming out right now that's worth a look, at least.
It might further undermine confidence.
Yeah.
And you've navigated, in your first year, you've navigated some of the strangest political times that I've seen, at least in my lifetime, and yet you have carried on what I think is kind of a fine tradition of District 1, because sadly I don't think we're even seeing this in all of the congressional districts in Utah anymore, but here in District 1, it's just work, and it shows you've been appointed much earlier than is usually the case in your career in Congress to some pretty important committees. You're in some important decision-making roles. Just was it this week or late last? Your team announced that you'd been appointed to the House Committee on Natural Resources, the subcommittee.
Oh, the subcommittee, yeah.
On oversight and investigations. That's a pretty hefty thing.
Yeah, I got the call actually this past weekend, so we announced it earlier this week. I'm excited about it. It's a leadership opportunity. And
a big one.
It's an important thing. The Natural Resources Committee is very important, particularly to Utah, where we are a heavy public land state. We have 65% of our space here is public lands, and to be able to use that as an opportunity to hold the administration accountable, and then also not just hold the administration accountable, and not just complain, and not just this is wrong, to actually put forth like the solutions going forward. And you know what? If people that are paying attention. Because I wouldn't recommend necessarily a lot of committee hearings if you want for rigor.
A bit dry.
Yeah, they're a little bit dry. But like what we're really trying to focus on is, if you want to diversify your energy portfolio and you do want to include wind and solar, well, guess what? You need critical minerals. If we're going to be doing the batteries, you have to actually be finding industry opportunities for mining. And then when you kind of limit everything there and then have these these really big goals. Like what happens? Our energy prices go up.
Sure.
So we are committed to making sure we have good, smart decisions. Reduction of emissions has taken place over, the last several years, and a lot. And during Obama and Trump, and you can even look at the data where the time during Trump we even did more reduction of emissions. American-led energy can do better than other countries, and that's the message we're trying to create. So it's not just about holding the current administration accountable. It's about countering with. What are the proper policies to get us where we need to go? So I'm really excited about that chance to do it. And I think that the ranking member, kind of looks at my team. We're, strongly aligned with his direction, but we're also not just flamethrowers.
Sure.
So you become a flamethrower back there, and, that's just for rhetoric. That's just for Twitter. That's just for fame that way. And I didn't go back there. I don't believe I was elected for that. I was elected to be a legislator. And I'm working on doing it. And I have to, and as I continue to build bipartisan relationships, I can go do bills like the Bear River Heritage Study Act. I can go do the Saline Lakes.
Very cool.
Great Salt Lake's receding. We need to address this issue, but I have to work with my Democrat colleagues to get that legislation through. And so,
sure.
You can be strongly conservative, and you can be collaborative with your colleagues and be productive back there. And that's still a thing. So it's becoming less and less, but it is still a thing.
Don't get too focused on the retweets on Twitter. Focus on the. You've had a successful first year as far as legislation goes. Do you have a favorite? Is there one that just stands out as the one you are the most proud of? That maybe
you
didn't get you a lot of attention.
But I can't. You can't not say the Medal of Honor bill.
Sure.
So that was we co-led that with it was a 416-0 vote. It's going to establish a Medal of Honor, what Lincoln created for our servicemen with the most valor, servicemen and women for the most valor, that you can have. We're going to put a monument up, and there's a joint effort in Texas to build a museum, and of the 6,000 or so pieces of legislation, a lot of it's messaging bills. People just want to kind of beat their chest.
Sure.
Only 100 bills approximately passed. To have that as a freshman in the minority, it's a really neat honor. So I was excited about it.
That was a fun one to watch. And what I've appreciated about your time in Congress so far is that you've brought to light a lot of issues that aren't, across the front pages or getting talked about on CNN or Fox News a lot. And one of those recently, at the first of this month, you talked about a program most people probably haven't heard of, but it's something here in Utah that has been very popular and has actually been economically important, I believe, from the numbers we've seen and from what the state economist told us actually a few months ago. It's called the Bridge USA program. And this isn't, currently really in the headlines. It's not getting a lot of discussion, but you want to change that. You want to, at least in Congress, get people thinking about this, talking about it, and supporting it.
Well, this is the first step. So we've all been to a ski resort or a hotel or something in the tourism industry here in Utah, and you'll see someone's name tag, and they're from New Zealand or Chile or maybe they're from South Africa. Like that's what this Bridge USA program is. It is decades long. Yeah. And we've always relied on that workforce to power our ski resorts and to, make sure, like southern Utah, a lot of the national parks. Sure. That workforce is vitally important because it's cyclical. These folks aren't trying to come in and work full time and stay here. They want to come in and have an awesome summer, cultural exchange. They get to learn it. They go back to their countries. They they talk to their people, talk to their friends and stuff about it. You get more tourism that comes from that. Sure. So this has been something that's had awesome results. It's a positive type of way to get a workforce in here. No negative effects on anything immigration related. And people honor these particular visas. And
because if they don't ever get to do it again,
they're here,
right? It's pretty strict.
Actually, they're kind of they're pretty strict. They're actually put up in the at the resorts. You could live near, say, Deer Valley or something like that, and we were able to provide. You go to Sun Valley, you see it there too. So it's across the country. And this was a resolution because of COVID. We had to kind of squash that program because we didn't want as much, border, foreign countries sending folks here, and things kind of shut down that way. This was an effort to just ramp it back up. Hey, Congress is obviously still supportive of something that's been highly successful. Let's get this going back again because our resort areas are struggling to find people to work there.
It's important. A resolution like this is important because things do have a tendency to kind of fall to the wayside once they're rolled back a bit.
Exactly.
So you're making sure that doesn't happen. And this is big to Utah's economy. For listeners of the show, you might remember a few months ago we had state economist Mark Nold on the show, and he talked about this. He talked about how many industries in Utah contribute huge amounts to the economy but couldn't support a year-round workforce. Yep. And this is a key component of that. Man, the time goes by so fast.
It does go right fast.
I know we've got to let you get on to your next appointment, but can we wrap up telling listeners what comes next for you? You've got, of course, you're going to be running for re-election. Everyone has to, but you've still got a full year of congressional work ahead of you, one way or another, and I'm sure you've got a list, right, of things you plan?
Yep. We have several
I've known you long enough to say that.
Look, so the quick brag, know that it's my team and their efforts to do this, but we had
Caroline? A list of
even Caroline. Everybody works hard. We have a number of pieces of legislation that we've been able to get through committee. And as I brag about this, we're the only freshman in the minority that's passed any legislation. We've passed 4. So we're really excited about that, and we need to make sure we see that get to the House floor and get it. I think there's a line about that in Hamilton. Get this to the Congress floor. Right. So we want to see that through. So we'll focus on that. Those are bills that are really particular to Utah. Yes, my purgatory is running every 2 years, but that's important. And I want to just make sure I'm focused and making sure that Utahns know there's a lot of things in our country we need to get back on the right track. And here's how we're going to go about doing it and provide that. And so we're working on that and communicating that as best as possible.
Well, appreciation for your time.
Plus, my son just made the club baseball team, so we got to make sure that he's stepping it up there too.
Shout out to
little Max.
That's actually pretty cool.
He's excited.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to have you here in the studio and for you to take the time to do so. We appreciate that. But also, again, from what we've heard from listeners and from myself, I appreciate that you are not that flamethrower, that you're not out there just trying to get retweets and get yourself on CNN. This is, like I say, almost a legacy of Congressional District 1. And it's a pleasure to see that legacy hold up and the work's getting done. For listeners, we've barely touched the tip of the iceberg on what Congressman Moore has achieved. You can see it all. blakemore.house.gov in the media section there. You can see a press release on every major advance, bill, statement, and more. So it's a good way to keep up. Also, I know you have events planned coming up later on in the year, and we'll be talking about those here on the show in district and teletown halls, things like that. We've got, working with his team, we'll have radio town halls in the work. So if you have a question or comment, you can contact Congressman Moore directly through that site, blakemore.house.gov. You're also welcome to send us an email, kvnuftp@gmail.com, and we'll make sure that your question is forwarded on to his team. And Congressman Moore, a pleasure to have you here in the studio. Thank you for making the time today.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
And for listeners, stay tuned. We've got more For the People and Charlie Schill coming up at 5 o'clock with our theater hour. All of that after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News brought to you by Northern Steel Buildings. Today, Utah officially began automatic expungement and becomes the second state in the country to implement a clean slate law. Back in 2019, Utah lawmakers unanimously passed Utah's Clean Slate Law, which automatically clears old and minor criminal records of individuals who have remained crime-free for a set period of time. Utah court spokesperson Tanya Mashburn explained that having a criminal record is more common than many people realize. More than 1 in 4 Utahns have some type of record, and those records can create barriers to housing and jobs. Nearly 500,000 Utahns have been identified for automatic clearance so far. Utah's Clean Slate Law provides automatic record expungement for cases dismissed with prejudice and certain qualifying misdemeanor conviction records. A 27-year-old Logan man has been found guilty of sexually assaulting a woman multiple times in 2019. Arthur B. Robinson was convicted on multiple charges after a 4-day jury trial in First District Court. Court records show Robinson was found guilty late Friday night on 3 counts of sexual battery, a Class A misdemeanor. The jury, however, found the defendant not guilty on the more serious charge of rape, forcible sodomy, and forcible sexual abuse. Prosecutors had claimed Robinson had raped and sexually abused the victim 7 times, and the crimes occurred between 2016 and 2019 while the couple were in a long-term relationship. Last Friday's verdict on the Logan case came after the jury deliberated for almost 7 hours. Judge Spencer Walsh scheduled Robinson to be sentenced March 14th. He will also conduct a preliminary hearing at the same time on the other remaining case. It includes 11 charges for object rape, forcible sodomy, and aggravated sexual assault. And a panel of Idaho lawmakers has introduced a bill that would allow the legislature to intervene if anyone sues the state over one of its laws. Coeur d'Alene Republican Senator Mary Souza did not speak in detail about her legislation during the Senate Judiciary and Rules Committee meeting on Wednesday afternoon, but said it would allow the legislature to play a legal role if there is a lawsuit questioning the constitutionality of a statute. The state has frequently been on the losing end of lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of laws involving abortion, transgender rights, and voter initiatives, ultimately costing taxpayers millions of dollars in legal fees. KVNU weather brought to you by Maple Creek Ranch, home to a paradise free of Cache Valley inversions. Enjoy warmer winter temperatures and cleaner air, being several hundred feet above Cache Valley's floor. Visit maplecreekranch.net. Partly cloudy, haze through the night, areas of fog after midnight, low near 20, and then partly cloudy areas of fog in the morning on Friday, haze through the day, high around 40. Partly cloudy, then clearing, hazy on Saturday, mid-30s for the high. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com. We'll check Wall Street with Edward Jones next.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, and where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
This is Rochelle Hanks bringing you the Daily Financial Market Report on behalf of financial advisor Tron Arnold and Edward Jones for Thursday, February 10th, 2022. Inflation in the U.S. came in at the highest level since 1982 this morning. The January Consumer Price Index, CPI, rose 7.5% year over year, above expectations for a 7.3% increase and well above last month's 7.0 reading. The higher inflation was driven by a rise in both non-core areas such as energy and vehicle costs, as well as stickier parts of the inflation like shelter and food costs. Overall, while the inflation figures surprised to the upside, we continue to see inflation moderating in the months ahead, driven by both the easing of supply chain disruptions and more difficult yearly comparisons, particularly as we head towards the second half of the year. Nonetheless, inflation is likely to remain above the Fed's 2.0 target percent for most of 2022. Given today's inflation reading, all eyes are now on the Fed and its decision at the March meeting. The probability of a 50 basis point rate hike at the March meeting has increased substantially today, over 90% now, as St. Louis Fed President James Bullard said this morning that he prefers a 50 basis point rate hike in March. Market expectations are for 5 to 7 Fed rate hikes in 2022 overall. In our view, the Fed certainly has some catch-up to play given the elevated inflation readings. While this may mean it moves more aggressively early in the cycle, perhaps sparking bouts of market volatility, we believe it will have the opportunity to move at a more gradual pace later in the year. This will be especially true if inflation starts to moderate in the second half of the year and the labor market conditions improve broadly. Overall, while the Fed is embarking on a meaningful tightening cycle this year, we do not see this derailing the broader economic expansion in the U.S., which we still believe is supported by healthy consumer and corporate earnings growth in the 8 to 9% range in 2022. U.S. equities closed lower today. The Dow closed down 526 points at 35,246. The Nasdaq closed down 305 points at 14,186, and the S&P closed down 83 points at 4,504. And in the bond year market, 10-year Treasury yields are trading at 2.4% higher. In stocks of local interest, Thermo Fisher is down $9.57 to $5.8028. Home Depot is down $9.28 to $355.09. Autoliv is down $2.71 at $101.17. Lowe's is down $6.26 to $227.40. Walmart is down $1.61 to $136.08. Nucor is up $1.51, $121.59. Coca-Cola is up 34 cents to $61.38. Kroger is up 2 cents to $45.17. General Electric is down 46 cents at $98.79, and R.R. Donnelley & Sons is unchanged. In commodity markets, the price of crude oil is up 17 cents to $89.83, and the spot price of gold is down $9 to $1,828. This has been today's Financial Market Report, brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and financial advisor Tron Arnold, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial.
Hi, this is Jess Bradfield, Cache County Clerk Auditor and Director of Elections. The 2022 election season is nearly upon us, and the Clerk Auditor's Office wants to make sure you're prepared to vote. Unless otherwise allowed by law, the deadline to affiliate with a political party is March 31st. Whether you've moved and need to update your registration or need to register to vote for the first time, please visit vote.utah.gov. It only takes a few minutes, and voting is one of the best ways to ensure your voice is heard. We will soon begin training election poll workers. If you're interested in assisting with the election, please call 435-755-1460. On behalf of the Clerk Auditor's Office, we look forward to a safe and secure 2022 election.
Hi, this is Drew Allen with Allen Mortuaries. Over the years, thousands of families have planned ahead with Allen Mortuaries. Planning ahead helps you make informed and thoughtful decisions. It also spares your family the stress of making these decisions under the pressure of time and strong emotions. Allen Mortuaries' secure pre-need trust plan can save you nearly 40% versus other plans. Keep it simple, safe, and secure. Go with the proven choice, Allen Mortuaries. Voted best funeral home in Cache Valley in northern Utah. Allen Mortuaries. Then, now, always.
Logan Dental Associates has been serving Cache Valley for over 20 years. They are excited to announce the addition of Dr. Brandon Preby, hygienist Emily Preby, and Dr. Curtis Taylor. Dr. Preby and Dr. Taylor will also continue to work at Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond. now allow for increased hours and advanced services at Logan Dental Associates in Logan. Call and make your appointment with Dr. Brandon Preby or Dr. Curtis Taylor at Logan Dental Associates by calling 435-787-8207.
The guys from UNI Furniture are excited. They went to Vegas and came back winners. Wait a minute, it's not what you're thinking. Those guys from UNI went to the furniture market in Vegas and they picked up 2 new lines of furniture. New lines of dining room, bedroom, living room, TV consoles, and home entertainment pieces. UNI also took in a semi-truckload of Southern Motion recliners, sectionals, and chairs they weren't expecting. Stocked up with lots of inventory and lots of great deals. That's why they say you'll always find a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. I'm Jason Williams. Listen to an interesting discussion on new normal earlier this afternoon. It was a live event that was happening in Salt Lake City, and they had a live stream. Tickets were free, but so I requested one so I could get the live stream link, and then I was listening to it as I was doing some driving back into the valley this afternoon, and it was basically what you had epidemiologists, you had healthcare workers, you had specialists who have studied or even practiced in the area of contagious diseases and the public side of that, spokespeople for various groups. And what they were talking about, the question was, this was organized by the University of Utah, and it was organized by one question: what is the new normal? And they talked about a lot of things. They talked about people who have been. They talked about the 2 extremes that we've seen over the last 2 years. You have 2 extremes. You have the people who just because they heard it on a podcast or read it on Facebook, think they're smarter than every scientist out there and every epidemiologist that has spent years researching and understanding epidemics. That's epidemiology. That's what it means. And yet, they heard Joe Rogan say something, so they're like, oh, I don't buy it. And there's always going to be people like that. And so they never took any precautions. They defy the simple physics of masks. That's one of the weirdest things for me about the masks don't work crowd is it's literally just physics. You can't argue with it. Well, you can, but you're not going to get anywhere. On the flip side of that, they also talked about this. They talked about the people who have gone to another extreme on the opposite end of the spectrum, people who are taking precautions that are probably unnecessary, situation by situation. I've seen a few people. I saw a fellow. This was back in 2020, so maybe cut him some slack because we didn't know that at the time. Maybe, but I saw a fellow jogging through on a trail in Logan Canyon with a mask on. Probably unnecessary, most likely. We've also all had our own personal experiences where you're making judgment calls. I've taken it very seriously because I think the scientists know what they're talking about, and so. But I've still made some judgment calls along the lines personally of, if you're going to walk into the restaurant thing, never made sense to me at all. So you were to walk in with the mask on, and wait till you're seated at your table, and then you're going to take it off and eat. What's the point? It's too late. If you've removed your mask inside of a room for any period of time, if you have it, you've infected the room. Too late. Just go ahead and leave the mask off. So that's, I've made judgment calls like that. And then you have to remember too that a lot of I think people have forgotten that a lot of the messaging on this is crafted for mass consumption. And so, they don't have time. The State Department of Health, the governor, Dr. Angela Dunn, when she was the official spokesperson for the coronavirus task force as state epidemiologist through the first 2 years of the pandemic here in Utah, they don't have time to run through and answer questions on every possible scenario that would pop up. And so what they do is they put something out that is easy to understand, easy to pass on to your friends and family if you heard it and they didn't. And also they don't talk about this, but there's the acknowledgement that people are only willing to do so much. It doesn't sound like a great thing to say about us as a species, but it's a fact. Faced with, great inconvenience versus putting another person's life at risk, the fact is, and maybe it wasn't always like this. Maybe we've become coddled and fragile so that, being asked to wear masks to protect other people is too much. I mean, it sure seems that way over the last couple of years. When you contrast that with what the greatest generation was asked to do, we seem pretty whiny these days. Oh, it's too hard. They talked about that, but they talked about, factoring that in. And in the end, the point of this whole conversation was what does the new normal look like? And it was really encouraging because you forget this. We're in the middle of a significant surge still here in Utah. Parts of the state have seen a rapid decline over the last few days this week, the first part of this week. And that's encouraging because that means the predictions that Omicron would taper off as quickly as it ramped up appear to be, those people, once again, appear to be right. And another reason why you should listen to them. That means, this, there is, within a month, probably, they said maybe 2 at the most, you're going to see this officially start to wind down. But it's not just because of Omicron. It's because you have, nearly 80% of the country at this point vaccinated with at least 2 doses. Still some concern that only 50% of the country has been boosted because that third shot seems to be very key with Omicron and any potential variants. There is still the potential for a variant, by the way. We've seen a variant about every 6 months. What's
the latest on this, what they call B, Omicron B, or the stealth?
The subvariant?
Is that
they talked?
I haven't heard a lot of buzz about that lately. So
they talked about it, and basically what they said. They went into a lot of detail on it, but basically what they said, my summary, not theirs, is it's kind of the same thing but more contagious, and so it's still producing mostly mild cases, but it's even more contagious than Omicron. So there's not a lot of concern about it at this point because they believe that the Omicron wave will come and go quickly enough that it will. The odds are high, at least. It means the final end of the pandemic, and by end they were very clear on this. In fact, the current state epidemiologist, part of this discussion, said, be clear. An end doesn't mean that COVID-19 goes away. There's still going to be outbreaks, and
it's going to be more like the circulating flu, I guess, or.
Well, they're hoping not even that bad, but enough that people are still going to go to the hospital and die, and that is a concern, and so there will still be, there'll be ongoing efforts to vaccinate young people as they come of age, ongoing, but also to continue to try and vaccinate some parts of the world where vaccination rates are currently really low, and there are 2 reasons for that. There's a humanitarian reason for that, they explain, but there's also a selfish reason for that, because those parts of the world where vaccination is relatively low, that's where the variant that resets everything and starts the whole pandemic over could come from. And so it's an odds game. I've been kind of saying that throughout. A lot of the precautions that have been recommended, mask wearing, social distancing, all of that, it's an odds game. You're reducing your odds. And that's also how the end game, as they called it today, will play out. Reducing the odds of a variant that starts the whole thing over. Reducing the odds of someone ending up in the hospital or dying from COVID-19. It's going to be with us. And they spent a lot of time talking about, as far as what the future holds. So one of the epidemiologists there, not the state epidemiologist, this was another epidemiologist, currently a professor at a university, not in Utah, that was part of this panel discussion remotely. And he said, I forget his name. I've linked to it on our Facebook page if you want to listen to the whole thing. And then the University of Utah has it on their site as well. But he said, this is something few people have talked about over the last few years. But coronaviruses are actually pretty common. But traditionally what happens in a animal-human crossover, animal-human crossover is actually very common for viruses in general, and coronaviruses as well. Even though they're less common than traditional viruses, it still happens. But he said what normally happens, and the reason you never hear about it, is that it usually infects an individual or a family or at most a village, and that's the end of it. And, everyone does what they can to save lives and keep people from getting very sick. And then after that, it becomes scientific research into the virus, into how it came about and how it's different from others. And that usually doesn't even make a headline, he explained, because so few people are affected. What made COVID-19 different as a coronavirus is that it was so easily transmitted. And so with that in mind, there was a lot of discussion during this panel today about, the future of this pandemic as it winds down. Again, likely, such good news, likely in the next month or two, they'll say, okay, it is officially, as much as at least it will ever happen, the end of the pandemic. COVID-19 will still be around. There will still be outbreaks. People, even here in Utah, are still going to get it here and there. And when they get it, there might be spread to a family or even a neighborhood or even a workplace. That's going to happen. Mitigation efforts will still be in place to keep an eye on that. The sewer water monitoring program here in Utah, that's not going to stop anytime soon. In fact, that might be an indefinite thing, which is probably a good idea for other reasons as well. And so all of that aside, they said, the real focus right now of many professionals, researchers and scientists in the world of virology and epidemiology is, how can we be better prepared for the next one? How can we have, more of a leg up so that we don't make the mistakes we made in one of the panelists today said basically everything that made this pandemic as long as it was, everything that contributed to that happened in the first 2 months. And that was kind of a stark warning from a man who has spent 40 years researching viral outbreaks, contagion, and even coronaviruses. And he said, you look back and hindsight all of that, but you look back and the first 2 months, some key mistakes were made. And at that point, it was going to be bad. And not all of those mistakes were made here, obviously. Other world governments made mistakes. Other cultures made mistakes. But he said all of that happened within the first 2 months, and that's something that they've really learned is that those first 2 months are very key. And so it was a fascinating discussion, but in the end, it was the reason I bring it up. It was enlightening, but also day brightening, I guess is how I'd put it, because if you, like me, have been taking this seriously, if you believe the scientists know what they're doing, if you believe in the physics behind masks and the ability to for medical professionals and researchers to develop safe vaccines, which they've done again and again. It's one of the strangest things about the vaccine hesitation to me is that the way this vaccine was, the method with which this vaccine was developed is different. That's it. The vaccine itself and what it's doing, nothing different about it. I mean, of course, it's tailored to the specific challenge. But the only thing that was different is that it was made with a machine instead of grown in a dish. That's it. So, yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And that makes me encouraged that we'll be, better prepared should something like this come along again. And fingers crossed it's at least 100 years before it does, again, like the last one. But that said, that was part of the discussion today. They said with population increases, with human beings being out more into areas of the planet that, we never have been before, as we continue to spread and sprawl, our contact with other species becomes more frequent. As climate change changes, water routes and water levels around the world, you're going to see different cultures interact with animals in different ways. One example that was given was a tribe. This was actually a case where a coronavirus actually did jump from an animal to a human. And this is one of the examples given of why no one heard about it, is it stayed contained to this one man and his family. As soon as they were sick, they were quarantined, and the professionals came in and started trying to figure out what he had. They realized it was a new coronavirus, at least for humans, and containment was effective. It never spread beyond he and his family, but it came from monkeys. Came from a monkey, and the reason his family, the reason they were eating those monkeys, they don't usually in this village. The reason they were is it had been a horrible drought, and the crops were slim, and people were hungry, so they were hunting the monkeys, which they normally don't do. And through that, there was a crossover, and he said that's probably going to be a more frequent thing, throughout the world as population grows and as lifestyles change, and we are in places that we haven't been for long periods of time before. There are going to be things like this. It was really interesting. But again, in the end, it sort of brightened my day because I was listening as I was driving. The end message was, look, we are likely, there are still some variables, so it's not a guarantee, but we're likely at the end of this within the next month or two. We've learned a lot. And in the end, the message was we have the absolute capacity to handle this much more smartly should it come up again. And to me, that was, I don't know, just a nice thing to hear. Give it a listen. Some Utah professionals were involved with this. A lot of folks from around the world, epidemiologists, virologists, researchers, healthcare professionals, all a part of this huge panel that happened today. Some they're remote, some in person. And I've linked to it on our Facebook page if you'd like to listen to the entire 2-hour event. It's very enlightening and like I say, encouraging. We'll be back with more of KVN News for the People right after this.
Cache Valley Chamber of Commerce invites you to attend the annual awards gala on Friday, March 4th. It's at the Riverwoods Conference Center. Enjoy a wonderful evening of fine dining in recognition of Cache Valley's outstanding businesses and individuals, including Citizen of the Year, New Small Business, Event of the Year, Nonprofit Mentor of the Year, and Woman of the Year. Featuring musical entertainment from America's Got Talent finalist Kennedy Dodds. Don't miss the Cache Chamber Awards Gala Friday, March 4th at the Riverwoods. Reserve your seat at cachechamber.com or call 752-2161.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aid technology. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Paul Daines by calling 753-HEAR or visit cachehearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Okay, guys, she's very forgiving, but this is the one time you need to get it right. Valentine's is Monday, February 14th. Call your phone order in now to Plant Peddler Floral. You'll see that something magical happens, and you'll get all the credit when the delivery guy shows up at the house or her place of work with a beautiful arrangement of flowers. Call Plant Peddler and have a credit card ready. Plant Peddler takes care of the rest. They'll deliver her Valentine's flowers and make you the hero she thinks you are. Call Plant Peddler Floral, 435-753-0444.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. Years of economic expansion are under threat as Moscow appears to be entering a new Cold War with the U.S. and her allies. Also, if you think working remotely is the answer to a work-life balance, a new survey finds that may not be the case. We'll explain why. And how the super rich go all in for a Super Bowl experience. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Thanks again to Congressman Blake Moore for joining us. It was a pleasure to have him here in the studio. We've had Congressman Moore by phone, for radio town halls. We've had him call in and to be a direct guest on the show before to just talk about this or that. And, prior to his run for Congress, we actually had him on the phone a lot for various local issues that he was a part of. But pleasure to have him here in the studio. If you have a question, again, we got most of our listener questions in, but a lot were left on the table due to the time crunch. So we'll make sure they're forwarded on to his team, and they've promised to get an answer for you. If you have a question yourself, you can contact any congressman, actually, at their House website, blakemore.house.gov. There's contact information there, but you can also send it to us at kvnuftp@gmail.com, and I can forward it on directly to his communications team and get a little speedier response that way. But thanks again to everyone who sent a question in. Thanks to Congressman Moore for his time at the first of the hour. Coming up in hour 2, Charlie Schill of CashValleyDaily.com joining us for the KVNU For the People Theater Hour. Got a lot to talk about. There's a lot you can get out and do this weekend. All of that